Why do NBA teams have such unique names? From Boston Celtics to the Miami Heat, each has a story to tell. But did you know the NBA was once born to fill empty hockey arenas? And what's with the Miami Heat almost being named the Miami Suntans? Back in 1946, the basketball scene was about to change forever. The Boston Celtics stepped onto the court, marking their debut in the newly formed Basketball Association of America. But why did they come into existence? Well, it all goes back to Walter Brown, the mastermind behind the scenes. You see, Brown owned the Boston Garden, a prime hockey arena that often sat empty, but he had a light bulb moment. Why not host basketball games instead? So he rallied other arena owners and together they birthed the BAA. But there was a catch. They needed team names. And thus, the Boston Celtics were born. Representing the green and white with pride, they weren't alone though. Only one other team shared their longevity, the New York Knicks. While many teams have come and gone, these two have stood the test of time, never changing their home or their iconic names. So, the next time you cheer for your favorite NBA team, remember the story behind the name. Who knows what other surprises lie hidden in the history of basketball? Walter Brown, the owner of the Boston Garden, had a problem. His arena sat empty on many nights, so he wanted to fill it with basketball games. But he needed a team name. After considering lots of ideas, he settled on Celtics, inspired by another successful team. Even though people warned him about using an Irish name, he stuck with it. Meanwhile, Ned Irish, who owned the Madison Square Garden in New York, had a similar idea. He wanted to host basketball games too. His team ended up being called the Knickerbockers after the original Dutch settlers in New York. This name later became associated with all New Yorkers. Both teams have kept their names since they were formed in 1946, making them special in NBA history. Right from the start, the Knickerbockers were called the Knicks for short, but their official name stuck around. Despite facing some tough seasons, they became the most valuable NBA team for many years until the Warriors took over in 2022. The Warriors have been around since the beginning. Founded by Peter Tyrrell in Philadelphia, they started as the Philadelphia Warriors, then moved to California, keeping their name but changing locations. Similarly, the Lakers began in Minneapolis, chosen because Minnesota has lots of lakes. They won big there, and when they moved to Los Angeles, they kept the name because of their impressive history. But the longest standing team in California is the Sacramento Kings. Dating back over 100 years to 1923, they've seen a lot of changes but have stuck around, making them a piece of basketball history. Originally, they were called the Rochester Seagrams. Then, in 1945, they changed their name to the Rochester Royals and joined a rival league called the NBL. But in 1948, they moved to the BAA, which later merged with the NBL to form the NBA. They stayed in Rochester until 1957 when they moved to Cincinnati. Then, in 1972, they moved again, this time playing in both Kansas City and Omaha. But because Kansas City already had a baseball team called the Royals, they needed a new name. They settled on the Kings, keeping the royal theme. This name stuck even when they moved to Sacramento in 1985. Another OG team is the Detroit Pistons. They got their start in 1941 in Fort Wayne, Indiana as the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons. The name came from the owner's piston manufacturing company, Fred Zees. Before joining the BAA in 1948, they had already won 2 NBL championships. In 1957, when the team moved to Detroit, they decided to shorten their name to just Pistons. It was a good fit for the Motor City. In the first NBA season of 1949, another team with hockey connections joined the league. It was the Tri-Cities Blackhawks, playing in Moline, Illinois. They took their name from the local hockey team, the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks got their name from Indian Chief Blackhawk, who lived in the Chicago area in the 1800s. In 1951, when the team moved to Milwaukee, they shortened their name to Hawks. This name stuck when they moved to St. Louis in 1955 and then to Atlanta in 1968. Lastly, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the original NBA teams founded in 1946. But back then, they were known as the Syracuse Nationals. While in Syracuse, they won the NBA championship in 1955. Then in 1963, a year after the Warriors moved to San Francisco, new owners moved the franchise back to Philly. They felt Philadelphia was a bigger market. To find a new name, they held a public contest. The winning name was the 76ers, representing the signing of the United States Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia in 1776. The original 8 NBA teams played for over 10 years until 1961, when the league added its first new team. They were called the Chicago Packers, named after Chicago's meatpacking industry. But just a year later, they changed their name to the Chicago Zephyrs. Then in 1963, they moved to Baltimore and became the Bullets, honoring the former BAA team, the Baltimore Bullets. Finally, in 1973, they moved to DC and became the Capitol Bullets. In the early 1990s, the owner of Washington Bullets wanted to change the team's name to distance it from gun violence. After rejecting names like Sea Dogs, Dragons, Stallions, and Express, they settled on Wizards. Despite the first two NBA teams in Chicago not lasting, the third try was a success. Dick Klein, the team's founder, used to play basketball and manage teams. When Chicago got a new name in 1966, he struggled to find the right name. He thought about calling them the Matadors or Toreros until his son said, "That's a bunch of bull." And that's how the Bulls got their name. Just 1 year after the Bulls joined the NBA, another team joined too. They were the San Diego Rockets. The people of San Diego picked the name in a vote because of their city's connection to the space industry. When the Rockets moved to Houston in 1971, they kept the same name because Houston is home to the NASA Space Center. In 1967, a basketball team called the Americans was created in New Jersey, but they played in a different league called the ABA. After a year, they moved to Long Island. Since New York already had teams named the Jets and the Mets, the owners changed the team's name to the Nets in 1976. The Nets played in New Jersey until 2012, then Jay-Z and M moved the team to Brooklyn. Now let's talk about a city that has lost its NBA team, but we hope they get it back soon. It's Seattle, home of the Supersonics. They got their name from the Supersonic Transport Project because of the city's connection to the aviation industry. You might remember that in 2008, the Sonics moved to Oklahoma City. They'll be playing there next season. Fans voted for the team name and chose Thunder over options like Renegades, Twisters, and Barons. Similar to Seattle, Milwaukee lost their original team when the Hawks moved to St. Louis. But after 13 years without the NBA, Milwaukee got a new team in 1968. Like many other teams, the owners asked the public to vote for the team name. The people voted for Robins as the name for the team, but the owners didn't like it. Skunks came in second, but they didn't like that either, so they decided to call the team the Bucks instead. It turned out to be a good decision. In Phoenix, like in Milwaukee, people suggested some bad names for their new team. Some okay options were the Scorpions, Rattlers, and Thunderbirds, but there were also some terrible suggestions like Sun Lovers, White-Winged Doves, and Cactus Giants. Unable to decide on a name from the public suggestions, Jerry Colangelo, a young 28-year-old general manager, took matters into his own hands and named the team the Suns. In 1976, the NBA merged with the ABA, adding 4 new teams: the Denver Nuggets, Indiana Pacers, New York Nets, and San Antonio Spurs. The Nuggets got their name from the Colorado Gold Rush, while the Pacers' name came from the Indy 500 pace cars. The Spurs were almost named Aztecs but settled on Spurs, a fitting name for a Texas team. Later, the Dallas Mavericks joined the league, named after a local radio contest. Miami became the Heat, and Orlando chose Magic because of Disney World. Minnesota became the Timberwolves, named after the roaming packs of Timberwolves in the area. In Canada, Vancouver's team was going to be the Mounties but became the Grizzlies instead, and Toronto chose Raptors after the popular movie Jurassic Park. Charlotte first became the Hornets and then the Bobcats, before going back to being the Hornets. Finally, New Orleans became the Pelicans after Tom Benson bought the team in 2012. He decided on a new name and identity for the team, choosing the Pelicans, which is the state bird of Louisiana. If you want to learn more fun NBA facts, subscribe and keep watching non-stop. So, do let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe button. Until next time, see you all.